Okay. So good morning again. All right, a couple things as you guys are logging in here. We're in the last full week working on our semester project. Many of you have already finished. Awesome. Okay. Later this week, I'll look at my schedule, but I think I'm shooting for you guys on Thursday of this week, having everything, and I'll remind you in an update, but on Thursday, I'm going to send out a schedule on Wednesday to where it's a work day from that, as far as like a 9 to noon would be my first hour. Oh shoot, I guess I got to figure that out, don't I? Yeah, I need to figure that out. Yeah, but anyways, I'm going to try and set up a schedule where I think the most I've ever had in here at one time, I've had a normal classroom setting about 9 or 10 or so, but I have the other classroom next door, but try and set up a schedule where it's sometime during the day, or you come up during your class period or whatever, something as convenient as possible, so you guys come up and get that finished. Although you can come up anytime during the week. You could come up right now, be sitting here in class, listening to my voice, working on it, and then ask any questions, so on. So you can even do that too as well, all right? Not knowing what your other schedules are and what your other teachers got going on. If it's already all video recorded, you have that option to do that, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead, we only got like 5 slides. It's a short, quick one, flatworms, but as much as it seems like no big deal flatworms, it is a big breakthrough in design, okay? And what I mean by flatworms belonging to that's pronounced Platyhelminthes, okay? That's one of the few words I can actually pronounce that's that long. Can't even spell it in Scrabble, I don't have enough letters. So, but basically your flatworms are exactly this. They're soft flatworms that are solid all the way through. You want to think of a flatworm like cutting through a Snickers bar, okay? They don't have any hollow cavities like our cells where we have compartmentalized cavities and various other structures that have gaps or openings or spacing or separation like that, okay? This is also a huge breakthrough because this is the true first time we have 3 embryonic germ layers, okay? And what I mean by that is these are the same germ layer setups from here on out with organisms, okay? As far as ecto, meso, and endoderm. When they're talking about embryonic, that means when you have a zygote and you have an embryo, a fertilized egg, at that level there are 3 distinct germ levels, okay? And it has been proven that these different germ levels, okay, as they develop, create into different systems where like mesoderm turns into organs, endoderm, nervous, things like that nature. So they know the tissues are where these certain things are programmed for, okay? They're also the simplest bilateral, and of course there's that word cephalization, meaning they develop from the head down, head to tail. Everything is censored, everything is around a sensory receptor head. They are also known as a new term for it called acoelomate, acoelomates, okay, which basically means laxacolum. So you're going, okay, Myra, I get it, acoelomate, laxacolum, I don't know what either one is. That's not colon, as in, part of your digestive, the end of that, that's colum, okay? And it refers to your trunk, the body cavity that houses everything within your system, okay? And a colum, with an E-L, okay, is a fluid-filled body cavity that's lined with mesoderm, okay? The mesoderm, or the middle, meso means middle, okay, is important to that. So acoelomate basically translates to it's solid all the way through, okay? So you take a little razor blade, you take something and you cut or dissect a flatworm, it's going to be solid all the way through. There is no fluid-filled, any type of body cavity in this type of body design, okay? Very simple, very basic for it. Okay, so you got a lot of stuff right here in this first little slide. Okay, I'm just pumping information at you. This is important. 3 germ layers. Okay, the cephalization, true bilateral symmetry, and you're actually getting a design in the body cavity. So you're already on that huge cladiogram. Really made a giant step into those derived characteristics. Okay, all right. So let's jump in. So because flatworms are thin, they rely on diffusion. So there's the most popular thing too. They diffuse stuff across their body cavity. They're aqueous or water-based organism. Okay, feeding. They're carnivores. Okay, little flatworms, they're little carnivores, and they're little scavengers. They eat dead, decaying material. Whatever it might be they come across. They have a gastrovascular cavity, just like in the cnidarians, except they have a single opening. It almost looks like a proboscis type trunk, like an elephant trunk. Okay, it looks like a little tube. If you've ever seen the originals sci-fi series, one of my favorite ones, the Aliens, they had those things, that would attach and then lay the embryo. they have that long proboscis type thing that they would, but that's what it kind of looks like. It looks kind of like a small trunk type tube that just basically radiates from just below their oculi, which are their eyes on these little flatworms, and they just work like a vacuum, or the same way like an elephant works. Okay. The branch deliver food in many areas. The food is pumped into the mouth, so you actually have a true mouth instead of just an opening. And here's another term, pharynx. Okay, so you're actually starting to see terminology associated with vertebral or vertebrates body anatomy. Okay, so here's a pharynx. Okay, which is a muscular tube, just like our larynx, pharynx. Okay, windpipe, food, all so on. So food is in its cavity, and then the nutrients diffuses through the body cavity. Okay, there are a lot of flatworms that are considered what they call parasitic. Okay, parasitic in the sense of they got to live off a host. All right. So one of the things I always make a point to remember is, easy way to remember this stuff is knowing what the terms mean. Okay, it's one thing to say, okay, flatworms are parasitic, but if you don't remember or don't clarify what parasite means, a parasite, remember, lives off the host, doesn't want to kill it. It can, because of its actions there, but it needs it for survival. Okay. So certain parasitic flatworms, they got what they call blood flukes. They live on body tissues, various things of that nature. So you're familiar with some of them, which I'll get to a couple of common ones that you've seen before. Okay. Pieces of cell, hosts of body parts, and so on. All right. Okay. So most parasitic flatworms have simpler digestive systems and free-living forms. So basically, when they feed on the nutrients, it's already digested, meaning the ones. What it means by that, there are certain flatworms that live in the digestive tract as parasites, so the food's already broken down. So I know it sounds kind of gross, it would be kind of like their pharynx is like a straw, sucking up a melted milkshake. Ooh, Meyer, that's gross at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Surprise, yeah. That's kind of what it is. So they don't need to have a fancy digestive system, all right? So just by simple diffusion, it takes care of everything, because the majority of the time, they're taking the digestive material right in through the host's intestinal system, which is obviously where everything's broken down. Okay? So on their feeding process, all right? So then once again, we jump right into 3 of the 7 processes that rely right on diffusion. So they breathe, circulation, and excretion are all done through that diffusion. It makes perfect sense when you got a solid organism like a sponge. There's no network like veins and arteries and intestinal tissue and things like that. So it's very easy for it to intake and expel CO2, other waste, and things of that nature as well. They do have a specialized cell, they call them flame cells. The reason they call them flame cells is because underneath an electron microscope, they look like little flames, all right? And they're just kind of like branched out. To me, it almost looks like I've seen a few under some microscope slides. I can't remember if I have any. And in the little short video you watch, I think you can see them on some of the transparent ones. It looks like those old 57 Chevys that have like the flames painted on them. They literally look like they got a little, like a flame tattoo on their body cavity. Okay. They remove excess water from the body. They also are used to remove ammonia. And here's another one, urea. Okay. So before, the first 2 phylums were just jettisoned as their nitrogenous waste ammonia, which is a toxic nitrogen. Okay. Now they're actually kind of diffusing a little bit of this ammonia into a lesser toxic material called urea. Okay. That's basically what our liver is doing right now with our blood system, is the ammonia products that are being taken out of our cells as waste are being neutralized from ammonia into urea before then they go to the kidneys to be filtered out completely. Okay. But they're being, softened up or watered down, if you might want to say. So, like I said, even in a simple worm, we're already seeing terminology that we can relate to if we're familiar with the anatomy of larger vertebrate organisms. Okay. Response, or AKA central nervous system. Now we actually have what we call a head, and more importantly, we've got a structure called a ganglia. A ganglia is no more than 2 or 3 nerve cells, people. Okay. So it's not a true brain. It's not as complex, but it actually has a central hub located in the head that's actually processing or in response to whatever's going on in its environment. Okay, it's not complex, so like I said, don't call it a brain. It tells you. It basically then has 2 long cords that goes down the left and right side of its body, called like bilateral, and then they're hooked across like a ladder. So it has a look like just a normal ladder you climb up the side of a house with, right? Many flatworms do have eye spots. These are little worms, if you've ever seen them in magazines, in science, tubularians, whatever, look like the worms that are cross-eyed. So you'll see those ones that kind of look like an arrow. I think I've got them in the little short video you watch on flatworms, some of them. But it's the little worm that looks like it looking cross-eyed, okay? If you've ever seen those. And they basically just detect light, low levels, shadows, things of that nature in their environment. They have other specialized cells to detect things as well. They can detect chemicals in food. That's why a lot of parasitic type worms are able to find the organ that they have to thrive in via the intestines or the liver or whatever it is. They can detect pheromones or chemicals or so on. So they have these receptors associated with their brain-like structure, ganglia, that can get them where they need to go. All right. Sometimes we just call it instinctual, but it's actually pre-programmed because they recognize these things and go to them. All right. And like I said, and they can also tell which direction water's flowing. Right. A little simple stuff. Movement, they have cilia, so those undulating little hairs, almost like me just rolling my fingers that roll around the outside. Or you'll see some of them in the videos, like some of the really pretty flatworms called, I think they're called dancing Spanish dancers, because they look like those, like the dresses that they swing. But you'll see what I mean. They're really pretty. They do this undulating motion, and at the same time, it's like a flag rolling in the wind, so it's pretty cool. But many of them have little tiny fine-like hairs that just basically creating that motion no more than you waving your hands, and it creates some type, like you're swimming, can get them from point A to point B. The muscle cells are controlled by the nervous system as well. So they have usually a herky-jerky, twisting, turning motion. It's not real smooth and fluid, but it gets the job done and gets them where they need to go. Reproduction, first term seeing this, even though I've talked about it, a term called hermaphroditic, okay? You've heard the term hermaphrodite or hermaphroditic. It basically means that they have fully functioning both male and female reproductive organs, okay? A lot of inverts have that. A lot of invert species have that, okay? Two worms join, exchange the sperm or the male gamete, okay? They have asexual reproduction as well, in which they occur by fission, okay? Remember, fuse is to come like fusion. Fission is just, they just literally rip apart right down the middle, okay? Because they're bilateral, they split like a banana and they can form two halves because everything on the left's on the right, so that's why it works for them. So they can do both reproductive asexual and sexual reproduction, okay? Here's one of the first groups, the tubularians. This is the one I was telling you about, the little, looks like a little cross-eyed worm. Most of these are found in, you can find these in simple freshwater ponds anywhere. Take a little baby jar or a bucket, scoop it up against the edge of the muddy embankment, take an eyedropper, put a wet mount slide, and chances are, moving the slide around, you'll find one of these floating around or running around in the water in your little slide. And they usually are running from the light because the light's so bright. It's kind of like how a deer looks in the head. It's too bright for the little lamp. So they're running from that, so you have to kind of search for them as they're swimming. Here, I believe that's a Spanish dancer. But they have this nice, pretty, bright colors. Also, the color coordination with flatworms, especially in marine life or the ocean, follows the same rule of thumb, kind of like amphibians and reptiles. The brighter the colors, the more, whoa, they jump out, the more possible toxic or poisonous they are. They're like, go ahead, jack with me, see what happens. I don't have to hide, okay? So you'll notice that pattern of a lot of organisms, okay? Especially with some that seem pretty frail and don't have a lot of defensive mechanisms. They secrete enzymes that are very toxic, okay? Or numbing agents or foul tasting or whatever it might be, or poisons that deter predators, okay? So these are the biggest ones, tubularians. They live in marine and fresh water, large in size, okay? Your trematodes or your flukes, these are one of your parasitic ones. This is if you've ever seen the show, and I'll try and cut some of the clips out. You ever seen the show, The Monsters Inside Me? Okay, it was always a popular series for a while. Sometimes they would cover flukes in there, different types of liver flukes, blood flukes, brain flukes, okay, which are a flatworm that are parasitic that can cause a lot of damage to people. Let's see. Most have life cycles that involve that. The cystosoma is basically just the fancy genus name for the blood fluke that actually causes this. There are actually a lot of parasitic worms that cause health conditions, okay? Egg clogs, basically the eggs clog the blood vessels, which causes the tissues to swell, and it clogs them up or suffocates them. This happens in places anywhere in the lungs, the liver, the spleen, the intestines. And think about it, anytime you disrupt the flow, especially of blood vessels, you're depriving those vital cells of nutrients, oxygen, they can start dying. All right, then you start having organ failure. All right, so that's not the objective of the parasite, but as it's mass producing eggs, the eggs can clog the blood vessels. You get the idea. All right, worm infections are particularly widespread in tropical areas with poor sanitation. Okay, there are a lot of higher cases of this stuff, and some of the pictures that I'll probably post and show you, or you can find yourself, show usually Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Brazil, rainforests, Malaysia, very tropical areas, very warm, very wet environments. There's a lot of them that are extremely parasitic like that are associated with that, okay? This was just a CDC poster showing, basically trying to explain to somebody about how the egg larvae work and their life cycles, the ones that are free swimming, i.e. example, free swimming larvae, they literally will bore through the skin or ingested by drinking water. There's some that bore through the soles of the feet, some that can go like up nasal passages, ears, I mean, any way, shape, or form, getting through drinking water. This is also not only because of bacteria, but if you were like in a third world country or some area, one of the main reasons you'd also boil your water is not only because of bacteria like that, but also parasites, such as these larvae that could get in you and wreak havoc on your system. A lot of the flukes are actually, once you get them and if they become ingested enough, there's some of them that are nearly impossible or impossible to get rid of once they become so infested within the host. Okay, I can't remember, there's so many different ones, but if we're in a parasitic or invertebrate class only, we go into a lot more in depth. Last, I believe this is the last. This is the one you guys are most familiar with, the tapeworm. Okay, and commonly called tapeworms, long, flat, parasitic worms because they look like a ribbon tape, like Scotch tape. Each little segment has thousands of eggs in the proglotoid. Okay, and they are ingested that way. Okay, so they have a thing called a scolex, which is a little round little bead that has all these hooks, looks like something out of a sea monster under an electron microscope. You've definitely seen these in the TV show Monsters Inside Me where somebody's had a tapeworm. I actually have some little specimens in here in jars. If any of you ever come in to work on your projects, I can show you some actual tapeworms. I have some in some little specimen jars that are for them to look at. We don't get them out, we just look at them, look like little ribbons. They have these little hooks and suckers that basically attach to the side of the digestive tract wall. And then the proglotoid is just the tail that kind of waves like a ribbon or a flag in the wind. Okay, so as digestive material goes by, these suckers, these hooks are hooked in, they like little vacuums, they're sucking up digestive material or whatever purpose. And then as this proglotoid's kind of flopping, little segments break off. Okay, as fecal matter goes by in solid waste, I know that sounds gross, but it is what it is. Okay, the stuff gets embedded in the material. Okay, and then, like I said, deposit in the grass. Cows can eat, the eggs can settle on the grass. It's very common. I think it's very normal for parasitic to take tapeworms to say if I had 100 cattle out in the field under wild conditions, over half of them would have some level of a tapeworm inside their digestive tract. It is perfectly normal. Okay. Mature proglotoids will break off and pass out through fecus, obviously released in material. Okay, so here, this is actually I used to have but this was actually a copy from a CDC or a Red Cross trying to educate with that language barrier about why it's important to cook your meat. Okay, like for example, the cow, obviously, at this point, you can go either direction, okay? But tapeworm, whatever purposes, these are like the little segments. They just drop in the grass, eat the grass, obviously. So then these little cysts will get embedded into the muscle fibers, okay? And then not properly cooking the meat, okay? That's why pork chops, because pigs are so, not too gross, I love pork chops, but that's why you never eat like no one ever asks you if you want a medium rare pork chop, okay? Because think about it, pigs, no offense, in the pig yards, they're walking in mud, slop, and you get the picture. Yeah, if you're in class, I'd tell you this really funny story the first time I ever saw a tapeworm, but I wouldn't want to hear because some of you probably had any breakfast. But back down at the farm, another grandma story of me getting in trouble, what we used to do. on the farm with the pigs, which was a lot of fun. But anyways, you get the picture. These are supposed to symbolize the tapeworm little cysts that obviously if a person would then ingest, you could get the tapeworm. And a lot of times in that TV show, The Monsters Inside Me, it's usually pork tapeworm larvae that you might have seen somebody that had been embedded in somebody's neural tissue or something causing symptoms. If you've ever seen the show, if not, you can YouTube and watch little clips of it. It's hard to find the full episodes anymore all the time without little parts of it, so you can find little 2 minutes, 4 minute segments and so on like that. Okay, that was one of the things that found pretty interesting when I was a kid and we had the pigs out in the yard. We used to run out into the open yard where the slop house yard, whatever, is where we'd have all the pigs, and you'd grab the little piglets by their tail and listen to them squeal, and then Mama Sow Pig would come running after you, and then we'd run across and jump up on the fence. It was like a game. It's kind of like, chicken, where you that. But one of the things that was always funny is, if you ever seen how big a female pig sow is, and they get really mad if you're messing with their little baby, cute little piglets. Good thing none of us ever fell down, me and my cousins, because if we'd have fallen down, slipped in the mud, Mama Sow probably would have caused some serious damage to us if, 1,000-pound piece of bacon running at you mad. So anyway, I won't bore you with that story there, but hopefully you come back, I can tell you that funny story and watch some of you turn your nose up at the little tapeworm story when I first saw a tapeworm out in that yard. So, okay, so that's that, and takes us to roundworms. Let me shut that off real quick. So